Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Barry Erickson, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator at Wheaton Public Library. We are delighted tonight to bring you a Create Along program, Frida Inspired Portrait, provided in partnership with the People's Resource Center. Since 1975, People's Resource Center has been bringing neighbors together to respond to hunger and poverty in DuPage County. Nearly 26,000 DuPage residents rely on PRC for help each year. We offer nutritious food and other basic necessities like clothes and assistance for neighbors in need. PRC also connects people with resources, education and tutoring, jobs, technology, art, and a caring community to create a future of hope and opportunity for all. Tonight's event will be led by PRC's long-term art volunteer, Rhonda Levy. Rhonda has been volunteering with the art program for over 10 years and joined PRC after retiring from her career as an art educator at a high school in the south suburbs of Chicago. She will be assisted by People's Resource Center's Director of Art Programs, Leslie Gina. So with our thanks to Rhonda and Leslie, I will turn the screen over to you.
As Barry has said, I'm Rhonda Levy. I'm an art teacher. My first 33 years were spent teaching high school art in the south suburbs. And then, about 11 years with PRC teaching an art class once a week. I first was introduced to Frida, it's got to be 35 years ago. And some other art teachers and I went to an exhibit. Nobody heard of her at the time, but we went to an exhibit, and being that her work involved a lot of symbolism, I started using that in one of the units I taught to my older high school kids. We did what was called a non-traditional self-portrait using symbolism, symbols to show something about you, about the artist. So also, I wanted to remind everybody that COD has an exhibit going on right now called Frida Kahlo Timeless. From June 5th to September 6th, you can get your tickets online, and you might want to go see that. I'll be there. About 26 pieces of her work will be shown from the Museo de Frida Kahlo in Mexico. So our agenda tonight will involve this. We're going to look at some of Frida's self-portraits, and I'll give you some biographical information. I will give you some ideas that I did myself for creating your own self-portrait. And at the end, you'll have time to do some of your own work. I was just reading a book today about Frida. There's so much information about her. You're only going to get a little tiny bit tonight. So I hope this doesn't feel incomplete to you, because there's just, her short life was just filled with so much stuff. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. And this is not one of Frida's paintings, but that's Frida, part of my little collection in my bookcase. Okay, next slide. As you look at each of the slides I'm going to show you, I'm going to be mentioning a couple of art terms. And of course, one is symbolism. Frida, yes, she shows her self-image, but she's surrounded in the rest of the painting by other things, which are not just for prettiness, but for symbolism. So she has a parrot, she has a butterfly, she has insects, she has nature surrounding her. And these were all things she loved. And especially when you see animals in her painting, which you will, bird, monkey, whatever, these are her children. Okay, she couldn't have her own children. So they become her replacement children. And when you are creating your own image later on, and even after tonight, I want you to think about what kinds of images represents you. So you're not going to just do a face, a portrait, or a self-portrait. You're going to include somewhere within the surface images that relate to you that are symbolic of something about you. And another word to know is composition. And it's hard for me to not know that if you can't see me point, and I'm just used to doing that, but look to see where is a face placed, where is the back, oh, thank you, Leslie. Where is, where are the objects in the background? But also remember that you're the artist and you're in control. You get to make the decisions. There's really no right or wrong in art. So think about as you see all these slides, how this might help you create your own later. Okay, next slide, Leslie. Okay, here's another self-portrait. She has her monkey. The monkey has his or her arm around Frida's neck. She has ribbons laced through her hair and ribbons around her neck. You will see in some of her other portraits, there are also other things that are wrapped around her neck, which if we had 3 hours, I would get into all the deep meanings, but we don't have that kind of time. But it's easy enough to, oh, I wanted to mention there's a great movie for a reference, a great movie on Frida called Frida by directed by Julie Taymor, who's known for The Lion King on Broadway, and starring Salma Hayek. And that's a great reference. It's so well done. And there's also a book that I get most of my information from on Frida. Her name is Hayden Herrera. So anyway, I will tell you, this is symbolic, but there's way more to know about symbolism. So you see the ribbons wrapped around her neck, her hair. You see again the foliage. You see again an animal involved, and he's kind of in a protective pose, putting his arm around her. Next slide. I should point out too the eyebrows. My students were always like, ah ha ha, look at her eyebrows. Well, she kind of emphasized, she did have dark eyebrows, yes, but she kind of emphasized them in her portraits. They almost become wings, like bird wings. You see her hair wrapped around her neck. And who do you see on her forehead? But her husband, Diego Rivera, who was a very famous Mexican muralist and painter. So why did she paint Diego on her forehead? Well, they had a pretty tumultuous relationship, and this was a way of keeping him in her head, in her mind, in her body. Next slide. So we have Frida. We have the earrings. You can see now around her neck, what's wrapped around her neck are thorns, which you can see piercing her skin. You can see the foliage again in the background, but we have some sky, flowers in the hair, and we have a banner across the bottom. And this was kind of common with some of her paintings where there was something written of significance. It's important to note that Frida's artwork were the result of her life being dominated by two forces, which was emotional pain and physical pain. And I'm sure painting was her great outlet, because when you read her, if you read her biography, you will know that how could anybody go through what she went through? So I'm going to read a little bit to you too about the source of her physical pain, but her emotional pain mostly came from Diego. They were married, they were divorced, they were married. He had a lot of affairs. He had an affair with her sister. So there was a lot of pain that way because she really did love him. But, the pain was significant. Next slide. Um, I'm going to read you a little bit about her accident. If you don't know about her accident, she, when she was very young, she and her boyfriend were on a bus or a trolley, and they were hit by another vehicle, and she was severely injured. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to read a little bit about the accident. This is Frida's. This is Frida talking. It is a lie that one is aware of the crash, a lie that one cries. In me, there were no tears. The crash bounced us forward, and a handrail pierced me the way a sword pierces a bull. A man saw me having a tremendous hemorrhage. He carried me and put me on a billiard table until the Red Cross came for me. When bystanders saw Frida lying in the street after being thrown from the bus, they cried, La ballerina, la ballerina. They thought she was a dancer. Somehow her clothes had come off in the collision, and her blood-covered body sparkled from gold powder that a fellow passenger must have been carrying. As soon as her boyfriend Alejandro was able to pull himself out from under the bus, he went to look for Frida. He picked her up. He discovered to his horror that the metal rod had punctured her abdomen. This is really something. I don't know how people live through these things. A worker wearing overalls, whom Alejandro thought he recognized as an employee of their school, said, "We have to take it out." The man put his knee on Frida's body and pulled it out. Alejandro then carried the screaming and bleeding Frida to a billiard room, laid her on a table, and covered her with his coat. His cries, he recalled, drowned out the ambulance sirens. Alejandro said, "I thought she was going to die." And the doctors too thought so, so they just left her alone to die. Seeing no hope, they left her alone while attending to other survivors. So Alejandro had pleaded with the doctor to please attend to her, please, and they finally did. But what had happened to her body in the accident was that her spinal column was broken in 3 places. Her pelvis was fractured, I think, also in 3 places. Her collarbone, 2 ribs, and her right leg and foot were all broken. Her left shoulder was dislocated. The steel rod had entered a hip and come out through her groin area, which explains why she probably couldn't carry babies. She wanted children very much, but she miscarried all the time and wasn't able to carry a baby to full term. She also had polio when she was 6, and that caused for its own problems, including one leg was atrophied and her right foot also had problems, and she walked with a limp. So she had she had about 39 surgeries in her life. Most of them spine, one of them amputated her leg. So this became the source of physical pain the rest of her life, because she was either in a body cast, in a wheelchair, laying on her back for months at a time, and that's how she started painting. She had a body cast on. Her parents brought her paints and a canvas or a board. She started painting. They put a mirror under her where she could see herself laying in bed looking up, so she could paint herself that way too. The 2 slides that are in front of you are 2 slides that represent Frida in 2 different ways. The one on my left is Frida in a traditional Mexican costume. Diego loved to see her in this costume. She looked feminine. It reverted back to more traditional costume wear. She's got the flowers in her hair. She's got Diego painted on her forehead. And you can see these lines emanating from her face out to the edges of the surface. And there are several interpretations for these lines that come out. But one of them is that maybe this is kind of like a spider web and she has captured Diego in her spider web. This costume also disguised her legs. She was embarrassed. They covered her legs so people couldn't see what they looked like. Now, we've got a really big contrast here to the right. And this is Frida sitting in a chair in an empty room. All her hair is cut off. Diego loved her long hair. He loved for her to look feminine. And here she doesn't. She looks rather masculine. She's cut her hair short. She has an oversized man's suit on. Although she did wear pants a lot because, again, she wanted to disguise her leg. But she did all the opposite things that Diego liked about her. Now, in previous slides, we saw like a banner or some writing coming across the canvas. And at the top of this one, Mero que si te quise fue por el pelo, which means, look, if I loved you, it was for your hair. Now that you are bald, I don't love you anymore. So this is something from a song she liked that she thought described Diego's view of her. What do we have next? All right, the next couple of slides are going to be examples I did this past COVID winter. Well, actually, the first three are from a presentation we did at PRC. It was a presentation for whoever concerning the upcoming COD art exhibit, which of course got canceled because of COVID. But we had a presentation by someone at COD involved in the Frida exhibit, and then we all came into the art room and we talked about how we would create our own self-portrait or portrait using using symbolism like Frida did. So these first three, keep in mind that there are all different ways of doing things, and maybe something here is new to you, you might want to try. Now, I'm a drawer. I draw more than I paint. I draw more than I do anything really. But what I did here is this isn't me. This isn't a self-portrait. It's someone else. It's an actress. And my printer is kind of a neat thing to have around if you have one. I did a black and white copy and a color copy of the original. And then on the copy, I started using color pencil, and I used it in the hair. I drew the ribbons around the neck. I drew a thorny necklace, chain and necklace. I did some of that traditional laciness in the background, and at the bottom put a scroll with printing in it. Now the next one, I used the same image, different copy. I started bringing in color with my colored pencils through the hair. I started adding my own background, leaves, two different kind of leaves. But the flowers that you see, I just did on a separate piece of paper. And I just did a bunch of them with colored pencil, maybe some marker. And I cut them out and I glued them down. And you could leave it like that or make one final color print. So you can start getting into some collage work here. I mean, this sort of kind of could be called mixed media, a little bit getting into collage. And the next one is again the same image. I played with the eyebrows, Frida style. The flowers at the top of her head were done on another piece of paper. I cut them out and I glued them down. I had the lines coming away from her head to the edges of the surface, and I added the crisscrossing of the strands of hair on her neck and the thorny necklace. Another image you see a lot with Frida is another symbol she uses is, it looks like a dead bird. It's a dead hummingbird. And This may be representative of her dead marriage, you know. All right, next slide. Okay, now you're gonna see a face, hair, hair on the sides, patterns to the top, left and right, bottom, left and right. And then you're gonna see another face, lower right. So what I did was I didn't like the face that I did first. This is all done in marker with maybe a little color pencil. So I didn't like the face I did originally. So I did another face on another piece of paper, cut it out and glued it on, which might be in the next. Let's see. Yeah, the color's a little different here, but this is the final edition. So here's the parrot, which she, again, these are her little children replacements. There's a pattern of feathers to the left, like the lines coming away from her head, but also representing her hair. Upper left, those are parts of butterfly wings. And to the right, you see flowers because she loved nature. Okay, next slide. Also, I did black and white copies. You could play around with your printer if you have one with color and black and white. If you create black and white copies, you can come back into it and bring your own sense of color. You can make a lot of copies of the original and play around so that the original stays the same, but you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't like this, I got to start all over again. No, you've got your original, make a copy, play with it, right? Play with it, meaning different materials, meaning use scissors, glue, add things. All right, this is the first drawing I did in this series is in pencil, drawing pencil with shading. I put a little angular feel to it like cubism. I brought in nature with the leaves, a lot of leaves here. Way at the top, I've got flowers and leaves going on across the top of her head. I've got her eyebrows going on, the heavy eyebrows. I have a, well, half butterfly, half caterpillar, I'd say. So then I made copies of this one. So this is a black and white copy. And what I did with a black fine tip marker is those of you who are doodlers, who like making designs, who are Zentanglers, this is really what it is. So I brought, instead of color, I just started playing around with my fine tip marker and brought pattern designs. And, if you're good at that, great. And if you feel like, I don't know how to do that, all around you, there are a million patterns and designs. All you have to do is look around you. Or if you have access to the internet, just type in Zentangles and they'll give you a million of them. So, you just start with one and you play. You don't like it, you make another copy of the original and play some more. And then this one too, you could make a copy and add color. And this last one is a copy of the original and I added color to it. So is this the last one, Leslie? Oh yeah, there's another series. Okay, so I drew a head, I drew a neck. I played around with a little bit of design. This goes a little bit more into collage because the two flowers at the bottom are cut out from a magazine. The bird is cut out from a magazine and the butterfly is cut out from a magazine. And I glued them down. I added color, I added nature, the leaves. I added design work. So we've got magazine images, we have black fine tip marker, we have regular marker, maybe a little colored pencil. And then I took a copy of this. Next one. So here's a black and white version, which you can come back in with other materials. You can try watercolor, you can try colored ink, you can try, instead of just magazine images, you can, maybe if you've got those like fakey flowers that can be attached and glued, you could use that. So, what I have done is just one tiny example of where you can go with this. Okay, next slide. I think this was a black and white copy. and I brought in color, pencil, and design work. You can tell I like to do design work, and I like to do color pencils and markers. But whatever your favorite medium is, try what you like. And you know, you can go off in a million different directions here too. And if we had another hour, we could do that. Well, if we ever all get back together again, we can do it in a classroom, you know, and share. Okay, this was probably a color I don't know. It's been a while. Color copy, more color, more design work, made the winter go by. And then my last set, this was the first one. I got a little more abstract for those of you who like to not work realistically. It was a little more abstract, breaking up the surface with lines, bringing in color, adding a background, flowers. Again, some of these were cut out separately and glued down. Made a copy of this, black and white. And the last one, I started in color pencil, but I did not finish it. Now, I think that's the end of the slides. Yeah. So now you are going to be thinking about, well, what am I going to do? Some of you already know what you're going to do. Some of you don't know what you want to do. So start with whatever kind of paper you have. You can start with, or a magazine image of a face. You could cut that out and glue it down to a surface, whatever you have in your collection. Put that down on a surface and start looking at what you have in front of you. Do you have magazines in front of you? Great. Look through the pages. You see something that, oh, I love to garden. So maybe you start cutting out some flowers, some plants, and arrange them around you. Maybe you have it behind you. Maybe you have it partly covering your face and your neck. Maybe you like to, what else is there to do besides garden? Maybe you're an artist and you like using different materials. Well, start playing with your materials on the surface. If you have access to your printer, make copies of the face you have and see where that goes. Maybe you could cut things up and rearrange them to get even more abstract and then add color to it. Now, I think in your little kit, you have colored pencils. I'm not sure what kind you have. I use Prismacolor markers and Prismacolor colored pencils because they're the best. But you know, make do with what you have at home. And if you're not a drawer, you don't like drawing, you don't have to draw because you can just cut out, glue, make a print of it, see how that looks, add your own color to it. There's a lot more to say about Frida. Again, I could talk for another hour, but at this point, do any of you have any questions about Frida or what you're doing right now, hands-on, or anything? Rita, do you have any questions?
I don't think there are any questions right now. Someone just mentioned that they wholeheartedly agreed with you about that Frida movie that profiled her life. So thank you for mentioning that. And so this is a good time just to mention to people to go ahead and open up your chat so that you can enter any questions or any comments that you have. But also we're going to be going ahead and showing all of these slides as kind of a slideshow to inspire you. And you can go ahead and get out your kit. You have the black and white photo of Frida there if you would like to use that. We also gave you some magazine images of flowers, some scrapbook pages that have some interesting patterns on them, colored pencils and a glue stick, all of those things. So you could go ahead and just start working with your materials. And as you have questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat and I will read them aloud so that our artist can answer them. Someone is asking, Rhonda, do you decoupage with your collage?
I used to use, I haven't in a while, but I used to use not, oh, what was that? Oh, Mod Podge, is that what it was called? Mod Podge. I used to use that, and I used to use matte medium or gloss medium. Just dip my fingers in it and kind of mush it around with whatever I was gluing down to a surface. So yeah, you could use that, yeah. And another thing to remind you about, whatever materials you have, no rules. Try something different. Don't just follow directions on the bottle or the container. Play around. And that's good for, this is a good idea for when you're in an art class, because you get to share so many ideas about possibilities. Um, if you're restricted in what you have right now, make do with what you have, and then be wacky about it. Maybe you finished one, rip it up and glue it back together again, maybe in a different order. Just see where your mind would go with it. But remember, this is about you. It's a self-portrait. So any images you're bringing into your artwork, they should tie into you somehow. When my students did this project, they weren't allowed to use their faces. They had to only use symbolic images. And if you think that was easy, it wasn't. But their results are awesome. So okay, any more questions?
Not right now, but again, just a reminder to go ahead and open up the chat. So if you have any comments or ideas that you'd like to share with the group that's here tonight, or if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I think Leslie's going to scroll through these slides so that you can continue to be inspired by those. And we also just have some music to put on in the background as people are working. And we will continue to look for those questions and comments that you have. And we look forward to seeing your work in progress as we go along.
Can I talk over the music?
Sure, let me turn it down just a little bit.
If you're looking at these slides again, you can look at how space was used, how much space is left. We call negative space, very little. How much space does Frida's face take up, her face, her neck? How much negative space, background does she have left, and what does she do with it? She's got some writing going on in the background. Writing, printing is a great way to use space too. It's kind of a design in itself. I was going to bring up some more. Oh, I think I've got all of her symbolism down here. So I think I covered that for you. If you want to add that little kind of banner to the bottom or the top, and you can write something in there, a message, that's okay too. If you want to hold up what you're doing in a little while, so you can play show and tell, that's okay too. Leslie, are you doing one?
No, but maybe I will grab my printout really quick.
That watercolor you were doing?
Oh, yeah, no, that's set up in my studio.
Oh, okay.
I'll work on that tonight with my inspiration.
Okay. Okay, we can put the music back on.
I just wanted to make a comment, and that is you can also do pop kind of, your last painting or picture sort of also resembles somewhat of a pop art.
I didn't hear all that.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead and ask the question again. I turned the music off for you. Or you can go ahead and put the question in the chat as well, or the comment that you had. Rhonda, someone is just mentioning that some of these portraits remind them of pop art and Zentangles, as you mentioned.
Yes, I guess you could call some of the designs I do. Well, somebody cashed in on, doodling and called it Zentangles and published books. And Zentangles are really designs, patterns, designs, doodles, whatever you want to call them, you know. And I do that a lot. It's very subconscious. So like right now, while you guys are working, I'm doodling on top of one of my copies. I'm adding more doodles.
Right. And the library has a subscription to a database named Creative Bug, and there's a number of programs in that offer little classes and instructions on doodling, that same type of design work.
Yeah, that would be a fun class to teach. Although, a lot of it is just stream of consciousness where it just comes out of your head rather than being taught how. But you can teach somebody how to extend a thought, how to work off of a thought,
It can be very calming and meditative.
It is for me, yeah. Are we going to do a show and tell? Too early?
Let me move my windows off to the side here. Yes, if you'd like to, maybe in a couple more minutes, we could have everyone hold up what they have done so far. We don't necessarily expect that you will have finished, but hopefully you have made some decisions about the type of things that you would like to do with your portrait, and you can show what you've accomplished so far. So we'll be doing that in a few minutes if you'd like, Rhonda.
Yeah, that would be fine. It's good to share because other people get ideas, or we offer the artist some suggestions, or, it's just nice to see what people are, how they're responding to this activity,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna switch the music to a very famous classical uh, guitarist for a slightly different style. I do think it's getting to be close to the top of the hour, so maybe in about 2 or 3 minutes, we'll take down the screen share, and anyone who would like to could show their work in progress. And so also, if you would go ahead and let me know in the chat if you have anyone additional watching the screen with you tonight. That just helps us to get more accurate attendance figures. So you don't need to tell me if it's just you, but if you have more than one person watching the screen, if you could just put that number in the chat, I'd appreciate it. And so in about 2 more minutes, perhaps, we will pause the screen share in order to show what we've done so far.
Can I say a few things too?
Of course, go right ahead.
I just wanted to encourage everybody, if you're really interested in the work of Frida Kahlo, she's hugely interesting, and there's so much more to what was said tonight. And you'll get a better insight into what her life was like, and you'll understand her paintings a little more thoroughly. Try to get tickets to the show at COD. About 26 of her paintings, but there's supposed to be a lot of other things going on in the exhibit. Also, the best book I found on Frida is by Hayden Herrera. See, here's the book. And it's a very good book. I saw her speak in person a long time ago at the Art Institute. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh yeah, rent the movie or find whatever you do to find a movie these days. Frida, starring Salma Hayek and Alfred Molina and Antonio Banderas. Frida, the symbolic self-portraits can go so much deeper than what we've talked about today. And it depends on you as an artist, what level you want to take this at. You know, you can really, artists do hundreds and hundreds of artworks. And sometimes artists just think, well, I tried it once, and you do it over and over and over and over and try new things and read and look and share. And look at yourself too. If you want to get into self-portrait as a way of putting your feelings down on a surface, you have to really think about yourself, what you like, what you don't like, but take it deeper. I drive my students crazy with this because I would tell them the first 20 things you tell me aren't going to count. Let's talk after 20. So they had to look really deeply into themselves as to what they were all about. So, you know, give it a shot. And thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me chat away.